This story is a goddamn nightmare of the regressive leftist outrage culture. I'll give you the gist of it real quick for those who just want to pop in, pop out. This woman, I believe this is the woman, I'm not sure if it's the photo of the exact woman. Someone sent an email to a black woman, saying things like, how could you be married to a man who is a known abuser? The wife and the husband got angry and then essentially targeted the wrong woman and caused massive damage to her life, accusing her of being a white supremacist. Ultimately, the black couple got sued and lost. But this is a really good example of how outrage culture is getting extreme in that they're targeting the completely wrong people. It's bad enough when you dig through someone's Twitter history and then accuse them of wrongdoing because 10 years ago they had a bad opinion. It's another thing when you point to the wrong person and destroy their life and then refuse to acknowledge it. So this is from citypages.com. The smear, a career-killing lie, almost ruined this rising Minneapolis dance star. I don't know. We'll read through as much as we can. I'll try and go through it quickly because I don't want to make it half an hour long, read through. On the morning of October 21st, 2017, the budding New York choreographer Gina Parker was sitting in bed, her husband lying alongside, when she opened her email and found a deeply unsettling one-paragraph message about her debut dance performance. The show was called She, a choreo play, an off-Broadway interpretive dance in which four women vividly monologize rape and abuse. Parker wrote and directed. Her newlywed husband, Kevin Powell, was the producer. In 1992, as a tenacious 26-year-old activist, he appeared on the inaugural season of MTV's genre-defining reality show, The Real World. That was in 92, wow. In the decades since, he's become a prolific public speaker, author of 13 books, and a two-time congressional candidate. Powell also has a history of violence. He assaulted women in college and once shoved a girlfriend in a bathroom door. Now he's a sophist and male fragility, and an essential component of his activist repertoire is to engage in public reflection, usually with equal parts of self-effacement and self-righteousness upon this personal shame. This is what the email to his wife took. This is what the email to his wife took issue with. Email to his wife took issue with? Oh, okay, I see. You are being a hypocrite. How can you present a message via dance on sexual violence, but knowingly choose to marry an admitted woman beater? It continued. Kevin Powell admits that he can relapse into violence. Don't be deceived and trade your safety for someone who can assault you. The sender was a woman named April Sellers. Stunned and bewildered, Parker felt that this small but cutting missive attacked her work, her marriage, and her choices all in one breathless dispatch. Silently, she tapped her husband on the shoulder and showed it to him. The couple Googled April Sellers. There was a law professor in Indiana, an Oklahoma district court judge, a high school softball player, but the top links pointed to the April Sellers Dance Collective in Minneapolis. That April Sellers is a choreographer of modern dance. She's 43, an anarchist, queer feminist, known for avant-garde expression of body politics. Critics would identify her work with epic emotions, big hair, and nude numbers that made all but the most daring of Minnesota venues flinch. The couple asked themselves who would be so concerned about a production like She, and determined that this April Sellers had to be responsible. 2 weeks later, Powell crafted a blistering 1,200-word open letter response signed jointly by his wife. It read, "For you, as a so-called progressive white woman, to think it's okay to send a note like that to a black woman about her relationship with her black husband speaks to a kind of racist privilege and racist condensation deeply steeped in the history of this country." Let me just point out, this story is the lucrative merger, I'm being facetious, of regressive leftists on both sides clashing. The response to someone saying your husband is an abuser, me too, etc., is white privilege, you're racist. This is what happens when two intersectionals are at odds with each other and try using their own ideology against each other, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I don't know who would be in the top of the privilege ladder or whatever pyramid. The couple called Sellers sexist for thinking she knew another woman's journey better than herself and accused her of committing a form of violence. Yes. We are sharing this response widely across various communities in Minnesota and nationally because we feel people like you are dangerous. They addressed the email to the April Sellers Dance Collective. The message was blind copied to the Star Tribune, NPR, A Prairie Home Companion, Walker Art Center, Juxtaposition Arts, the Minneapolis NAACP, 24 members of the State Arts Board, and the St. Paul Public School District. where Sellers taught part-time. Asked later what he wanted to know about Sellers, Powell explained, "If you have someone who's a white supremacist in your community, people should be aware of it. If you have someone who's a rapist in the community, people should be aware of it. If you have someone who's spewing hate speech, they should be aware of it. That's basic." You see how they've weaponized these ideas. This woman is not a white supremacist. This woman never actually messaged them. They got the wrong April Sellers and publicly admonished this person for something she did not do and sent it to everyone. And I'll tell you what happens. These other organizations are going to cut ties with her, are going to attack her, because they don't want to get dragged too. It is a disruptive, psychotic community that is terrified of each other. Is that the world you want to live in? No. And if you watched the video on my main channel, maybe you didn't, I recommend you go do it. YouTube.com/Timcast. Pew Research shows that Democrats want to go more moderate and Republicans mostly want to go more conservative. While I'm not enthused about conservatives wanting to go further right, I will say it's very interesting that most Democrats want to go more moderate, because this freakish behavior doesn't make sense and doesn't work. How is it that some woman accused Powell, the original April Sellers, accused a woman of marrying an abuser? So then their response was to go even more aggressive and accuse her of being a white supremacist. And I'm sorry, accuse the wrong person. But you see what they were trying to do? They were trying to essentially redirect the intersectionality back at this person. It didn't really work. Unfortunately, for everyone involved, the couple were enacting their revenge on the wrong woman. Yes. And did they, according to the story, I believe it says, they didn't actually ever back down, got sued and lost. So I don't want to spend too much. It's a long story. Essentially, we go through, they talk about how the woman falsely accused was terrified for an extended period where she knew people were accusing and there's nothing she could do about it. What is someone supposed to do when you're accused by a black couple of being a white supremacist? In that community, if you come out and claim they're falsely accusing you, no one will believe you. And this is why I'll say this to dudes. It's like so incredibly dangerous to be active in this community. Look at what happens to, what's that dude's name? I can't remember the guy's. He worked for Mike.com. He was a journalist who was accused of abusing women. End of story. Career over. It doesn't matter if it's true or false. If they say it's true, it is. You're a man, privileged, and you're white. End of story. Jack Smith, I think his name was. So essentially, the other April Sellers then comes to stand up. So they say, after about a month receiving the letter, April Sellers took a dancer out to Masu Sushi and Robata in Northeast Minneapolis. They had a show. It was her custom to gather feedback from performers in one-on-one reviews. As the hostess walked them to their table, she ran into Star Tribune arts critic Rohan Preston, who was holding court at the sushi bar with Peter Brosius, artistic director of the Children's Theater Company. Sellers said hello. She and Preston had a long working relationship. His coverage of her early work helped her build credibility. As they chatted, he mentioned he'd received a letter and a phone call from Kevin Powell, an old friend whom Preston knew as an ambitious young writer in the 90s. Feeling bad for Sellers, the critic asked how she was doing. She broke down and began to cry. There was no longer any question about the lengths Powell and Parker had gone to shame her. A shadow of paranoia stalked her for months afterwards, isolating her from other artists and forcing her into a creative drought. Because she hadn't had a chance to tell her side of the story, she feared going out. She'd leave shows early to avoid talking to people, quit rehearsals, and wouldn't enter a studio for half a year. Several of her performers who'd been with her for 7 years had to commit to other projects. I'll say this. I have been victim to false accusations. There was a period where some psychotic individual accused me of being a federal agent and started calling up numerous people in the hacker community, telling them that she knew I worked for the Fed. I was a Fed. She had proof, but she couldn't publish it because that would result in like people getting hurt. Now, I don't know if that's literally what she said. That's what was relayed to me by one of the people who claims she called them. So I'll put this down right now. It's an accusation made. I was on the phone with this individual and they accused me of being a Fed. And then later I hear other people in the hacker community claiming this is what happened. And sure enough, this outrage culture works. It works. And you know what? I want to have nothing to do with these people or these places. If you want to believe random gossip, go ahead and do it. But this poor woman is crying because someone decided to shame her. But the craziest thing is they refused to back down. Now, ultimately, what ended up happening, it's a long story. I'll put the link to it if you want to read through it specifically. What happens is the jury awarded Sellers $210,000, which is a little less than half of what she requested. They let Parker off the hook because Powell admitted taking the lead in writing and disseminating their letter. Neither apologized. Welcome to the world of the progressive left. They will light you on fire in a scorched earth tactic that will ultimately cost them $200,000. And will they apologize? Of course not. They'll launch a GoFundMe account and raise $16,000 to try and cover their costs. You know what that means? They didn't succeed in raising all the money they wanted. But people actually gave them money after the evil actions they took. So you know what? It's not a world I'd want to be in, and I hope no one else wants to either. Fortunately, this woman got some, justice to an extent. But I don't think there's any amount of money that I would be willing to take to endure that kind of, ostracizing or losing your career, being depressed and scared, having people falsely accuse you. It's never worth it. I would rather be free, sitting in the woods, chewing on some straw or something, free from these psychotic people who want to tear you down. But you know what? The reality is people do this to me all the time. They willfully lie. They post horrible lies. They know it's fake. And then people send me ridiculous things. Welcome to modern politics. And now you're seeing innocent people falsely accused. Go figure. Stick around. I got one more video coming up in a few minutes.